The looter shooter RPG genre has a lot of wacky fun, and nothing is topped, at least for me, the Borderlands franchise. From its comic style and classes to the Mad Max in space vibe to the story and characters. It's also very available on handheld consoles. The PS Vita made a solid attempt last gen, but the Switch now has access to all of its main titles, from the original all the way to what we're talking about today. Something many people online thought could not be done while conveniently forgetting about the hybrids ports of 1, 2, and pre-sequel. Let's dive right in. Here is my review of Borderlands 3 Ultimate Edition for the Nintendo Switch. With story, 3 takes place about 7 years after the events of Borderlands 2. You play as a vault hunter looking into a cult and joining up with the Siren Lilith from the original game, aiming to recover a vault map, fighting off the children of the vault cult along the way. Now, what I like about this game's story is that we do have a lot of returning characters, but we finally break free of the planet of Pandora and go to many new places. Pre-sequel did this as well, but you get 4 different planets you can visit in this game, greatly expanding the lore of the franchise. As for the story itself, I find it good, but not great. The God Queens and other villains are fun, but the plot is nowhere near as charismatic as Handsome Jack and the rest of the cast from 2. When it comes to gameplay, this is a looter shooter RPG. As you play, you'll be trekking across large environments, doing missions, leveling up, and exploding the heads of psychos in magnificently colorful fashion with a wide array of crazy designed weaponry. First, let's talk about the Switch port's differences. We do get all of the DLC campaigns the other platforms got, though you do need to actually go to the DLC section in-game to redeem all of those free expansions in order to download and install them. Second, let's talk about the restrictions. Online co-op is still here, but you're limited to 2 players rather than 4. We also seem to be missing photo mode. It's unknown on whether that will come to the Switch in the future. Now on to the game itself. Borderlands 3 is much like earlier entries. You select a character and class and can customize them, each with their own skill set like the magic-wielding Siren. You're then trekking through many open sandbox-style maps, discovering locations, doing missions, and of course, shooting and looting everything that moves. And a lot of this will be familiar. The story pushes you towards an area with a main mission, and you go explore dungeons while also having the option to fast travel around these gigantic sandboxes to discover side missions. Since Borderlands is essentially an RPG, tons of items and missions will have level requirements, and the best way to get those levels is by doing side missions. You don't necessarily have to be able to fight enemies, as this is much better balanced difficulty-wise than the earlier entries, but you will need to do it to access that future equipment. But there are some improvements. Some are smaller quality of life things, like the fact that Borderlands 2 had you going to fast travel stations to be able to switch zones, while in Borderlands 3 you can just pop up the map and jump to any fast travel station you want, even between different planets. And of course, the one thing that Borderlands just seems to keep improving from game to game is the gunplay. This is a looter shooter where you're constantly getting new kinds of guns, not in the sense of different sorts of firearms like shotguns, submachine guns, and sniper rifles, but different variations of the gun types that feel and look so different. You can go from a very standard looking pistol to a weird and wacky plasma gun. A lot of them feel really alien and sci-fi, while others are just crazy and over the top. 3 also introduced alternate firing modes for weapons, which could be as simple as a pistol going from normal to semi-automatic firing modes to a sniper rifle rotating its barrel and becoming a rocket launcher. Every gun feels different, and the responsiveness in 3 is really good, from the aiming, firing, and all of those fun-looking reload animations. And that's really where the fun comes from. Great gunplay and leveling up to enhance your class ability to do more things with those guns. You'll also be doing this quite a bit. 3 isn't nearly as long as 2, but you'll be spending a good 25 hours with the main campaign, and then whatever you want to do as far as the DLC goes. Next, let's touch on controls for just a moment. If you recall, I noted that the previous Borderlands games on the Switch had motion aiming and aim assist, but they couldn't be enabled together. They fixed that here. You can turn both of them on and enjoy both at the same time. Now for presentation, what everybody on the internet thought would never work. Visually, the game looks good. I'd say it's comparable to Borderlands 1 and 2, but with the locales and characters of 3. Thanks to the comic style of the visuals, it looks pretty good on the Switch. There are some textures that are a bit weird and fuzzy, but it's pretty good overall. With performance, it's surprising, but not perfect. First of all, you will have pretty lengthy load times. First booting up the game is at least a couple minutes long, and swapping zones does take time. It's not the worst I've seen, but far from the best. Then with frame rate, it's completely unlocked. In a lot of areas not filled with enemies, the game will average a very impressive 45 to 60 FPS, which completely blew me away. But there are drops. When you get into busy firefights, the FPS will drop to 30 and occasionally lag a bit below. It doesn't happen terribly often, but you will see drops into the 20s from time to time in firefights, as well as navigating the Sanctuary spaceship. Despite this not being perfect, this is still a pretty nice feat for Borderlands 3, tying the mostly stable frame rate to the fact that they turned an over 100 gigabyte game on PC and home consoles into less than 30 on the Switch. Next up is battery life. On the original and light models, Borderlands 3 gets a battery range of about 2.5 to 3 hours, while the V2 and OLED get 5 to 5.5 hours. In conclusion, Borderlands 3 comes to the Switch in a pretty surprising and good way. Now on the downside, it has long load times and there are still some FPS drop areas where you will see the high 20s. But it's a feat that they got this monster of a game into a bite-sized format on the Switch and running pretty well for the most part. It's not perfect, but for what it is, it's pretty darn good. Reviews to Go rates Borderlands 3 for the Nintendo Switch an 8 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching and have a great day.